A Karen teacher accuses me, a type 1 diabetic, of lying about needing to check my blood sugar and confiscates my glucometer during class. She even makes racist remarks, but her actions result in her getting in big trouble. Here's what happened. So, let me give you some context. I'm a 16-year-old Indian guy, and I've been living in the United States for the past 5 years. I'm a bit of a tech geek. I know stereotypes, and I'm always up to date with the latest gadgets. Unfortunately, I'm also a type 1 diabetic, which means I have to monitor my blood sugar levels regularly. I use a glucometer to do this, which is a small device that reads my glucose levels from a tiny blood sample. It's essential for me to carry it around, as it helps me avoid any potentially life-threatening situations. On that fateful day, I was sitting in my physics class, taught by a middle-aged woman who we'll call Karen for this story. She's known for her abrasive attitude, and she's never been a favorite among students. Now, Karen is one of those teachers who believes that technology is the root of all evil and always goes on rants about how kids these days are addicted to screens. I guess you can see where this is going. The school day had just begun, and I was feeling a bit off. I suspected that my blood sugar levels might be low, so I discreetly pulled out my glucometer from my backpack, hoping Karen wouldn't notice. I was sitting in the back of the class, so I thought I could get away with it. But boy was I wrong. Karen's hawk-like eyes immediately zeroed in on me. She marched over, her heels clicking loudly against the linoleum floor, and demanded, "What do you think you're doing?" I tried to explain. "Mrs. Karen, I'm just checking my blood sugar levels. I'm diabetic and But she cut me off. "Don't lie to me. That's a gaming device, isn't it? Always with the gadgets, you people. Hand it over right now." I was flabbergasted. "No, really, it's a glucometer. It's important for my health. Please let me—" She snatched the device from my hands, smirking triumphantly. "Nice try, I'm confiscating this. You can get it back after class. Now pay attention." I was seething, but I didn't want to create a scene, so I decided to wait it out. The class dragged on, and my condition was getting worse. I could feel myself getting shaky, which is usually a sign of low blood sugar. The bell finally rang, and I approached Karen to get my glucometer back. "Mrs. Karen, can I please have my glucometer back now? I really need to check my blood sugar." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, stop with the theatrics. You're not fooling anyone. You just want your precious little game back, don't you?" At this point, I was getting desperate. "Please, I'm not kidding. I really need it. I feel weak, and Karen scoffed. "Of course you feel weak. You're just trying to manipulate me into giving it back. I bet you rigged it to look like a medical device, huh? That's what you Indians are good at, right? All those tech tricks?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only did she refuse to give me my glucometer back, but she also had the audacity to make a racist remark. I was livid, but I knew I needed to stay calm to resolve the situation. "Mrs. Karen, that's not only rude but also incredibly racist. I have a legitimate medical condition, and I need my glucometer. If you don't believe me, you can call my parents or the school nurse. But please give it back. My health is at risk here." Some students had lingered around to see the outcome, and they started murmuring in agreement with me. I could see Karen's face turning red with anger, but she reluctantly agreed to call the school nurse. The nurse arrived, and I quickly explained the situation. She looked at Karen with disbelief and scolded her for her actions. Karen handed my glucometer back to me with a huff, clearly embarrassed by the whole ordeal. I finally checked my blood sugar levels, and as I suspected, they were dangerously low. The nurse escorted me to her office where I got some juice and snacks to help stabilize my levels. The story doesn't end there though. My parents were informed about the incident, and they were furious. They met with the principal and demanded that Karen be reprimanded for her irresponsible and racist behavior. It turns out that I wasn't the first student to have issues with her, and after a thorough investigation, Karen was let go from the school. It was a stressful experience, but I'm glad it ended with Karen facing the consequences of her actions. Oh my gosh, OP, this Karen is absolutely bonkers. First of all, the nerve of her to accuse you of lying about your diabetes and calling your glucometer a gaming device. I mean, come on, really? And as if that wasn't bad enough, she even threw in a racist remark. Unbelievable. It's one thing to be suspicious, but to cross that line is just unacceptable. I gotta say though, I'm super proud of how you kept your cool and stood up for yourself. Not everyone could stay calm in a situation like that. Plus, props to your classmates for backing you up. And oh boy, the sweet justice of Karen getting fired in the end. What goes around comes around, right? Good riddance. A Karen attempts to steal my dog from the front of a local ice cream parlor, but little did she know that the owner was also the head of the local council. After getting caught, she was banned from all local-owned stores in the town. Here's what happened. I had someone once try to take my blue heeler Sophie from me when I was out in town with her. At the time of the story, I was 19, and my younger brother was 6. I'd take Sophie out with me and pick him up from school. Then we'd got to the restaurant next to where my father worked as a pharmacist. When my father was done at work about an hour after we got there, we'd all carpool home together. The little brother would take his food to the little arcade machine they had in the back and blow his allowance on it, and I'd go outside to eat with Sophie while reading on my tablet. It was a nice little mom-and-pop ice cream parlor/restaurant that's been around since the early 1930s, and it's across the street from a rather well-known local tourist attraction. We knew the owners, and they liked her, often spoiling her with food that was either turned away or just stuff they couldn't sell that day. The owner's wife would often spoil Sophie with free ice cream or a piece of saltwater taffy. So here's the story. The little brother had had a half day on the day this happened, so we'd gotten there right as the lunch crowd was leaving. I leashed Sophie to an outdoor table at the restaurant while my little brother and I went inside to order, as per our usual routine. The owners had no problem with it, as we were on good terms at the time and still are. Sophie wasn't aggressive, and I was on first-name basis with most of the staff who adored her. Most of them were either still in high school or just graduated and picking up a first-time job. I go to place our order, including something for Sophie to eat, and halfway through the order, the server points behind me and says in a panicked voice, "Someone's trying to grab Sophie." I dropped what I was doing, turned around, and saw this heavy-set lady trying to corral Sophie around the table, with one hand on her leash and the other hand trying to grab her collar. I'd had people ask me if she was for sale before. She was, and still is, a very beautiful dog, even at 16 years old now, but nobody had tried to just take her before this. I rushed toward the door and threw it open so hard it nearly cracked the glass pane. Meanwhile, the cashier was calling the owner out of the back of the kitchen. After I got out the door, I demanded, "The hell are you messing with my dog for?" The lady responded with a sweet voice, "I was going to take her home." Like she wasn't just trying to steal someone's beloved pet. I lost my shit and screamed at her, "You get your hands away from my dog, or there's going to be police involved, and it won't be for you." I was, and still am, a big guy. I'm 6'1", and about 280 pounds. She jerked her hand away like she'd been stung, but decided to try to start ranting at me about how, "You obviously don't care for the poor thing if you're leaving it tied out here in the sun. You don't deserve this sweet little thing." The nerve of this lady. She'd been caught red-handed, and she was still trying to get my dog. At this point, I'd had it. "Lady," I started in a low growl, trying and failing to keep calm. I've had anger management issues since I was small, so this wasn't easy. "She's in a shady area, and I set a bowl of water down for her which she hasn't even touched yet. I'd been in the restaurant for about a minute before you decided to try to abduct her, and we eat outside of this establishment all the time." At this point, I was about ready to explode, but kept calm as I could as I grabbed Sophie's leash and unclipped it from the table. She immediately hid behind me, and I tried to back off, but this entitled lady wasn't done yet. "You don't deserve such a beautiful dog. I want her for my kids to play with," she demanded. At this, I sensed an opening to de-escalate the situation. "That's a terrible idea." I started, having an idea on how to get out of this situation. "This breed is notorious for being bad with kids. This is true with the breed, but not with Sophie. She's always loved kids, and she's mixed with Australian Shepherd, which are generally great with kids in my experience. But this lady didn't need to know that." "What are you talking about? She's been so friendly every time you're down here." This raised every alarm bell and red flag in my head at the same time. She'd been watching me and Sophie for at least a week or two to know how often I was down here, and know our routine. She might have even planned this out in advance. "This is a cattle dog. They're bred to work with half-wild cattle and are known as healers for how they bite at heels of people and animals. They're not like Lassie." I started ranting. To be honest, I never knew if she understood that reference. "And it doesn't matter anyway. This is my dog, and you're not getting her. Now leave us alone before the police get here. The staff have already called them." This was a bluff. I had no idea what the staff was doing, but it made her stop for a minute, and that was long enough for me to get back to the door and open it before asking the owner, who had come out of the back, "Hey owner," not gonna use his real name without permission, "mind if I wait in here with Sophie for a bit? Someone just tried to take her while she was out front." The owner took one look at me, and at Sophie trying to hide from the lady, and replied, "Head into the back. I'll let you know when it's safe." I took Sophie and headed back into the area next to the arcade machine, where she cuddled up to my little brother, who she's always been attached to. Meanwhile, I heard the owner start telling the lady off. She even tried to claim I stole her dog. The conversation went like this: "He just took my dog." The owner said, "Nice try, but he's a regular customer, and he's had that dog for 2 years now. I've known her since she was a puppy. I'm not leaving until I get that dog." The owner, in the most quiet, soft, and collected voice I'd ever heard him use. It honestly made him more intimidating. I'd never seen him get angry before, and it was terrifying. "No, you're leaving right now. We have you on camera trying to take his dog. This isn't over. I want to speak with the owner." "Yes, it is. I'm the owner, and you're banned, both from my store," for some reason he never called it a restaurant, "and all other stores in town. You can't do that. You have no authority." Yes, I can. I'm head of the local council, and I'm making sure they all see what you did. If you leave now, you should get away before his father gets here. I've already called him, and he's not a nice man when his family is threatened. This was a bluff. He never called my father, but I didn't learn that until years later. Dad was a true papa bear when it came to us kids, even threatening the local deputy once when he came into our house when he wasn't home. This was what finally broke her, but she wasn't going to leave before getting in one last blustering half-threat. Fine, I'll leave, but this isn't the end of this. After which she stormed out. It turned out that was the end of it. The lady got kicked out of all the local-owned stores and had to do all her shopping at a chain store in the next town. She later moved out of the area when people found out what type of person she was and stopped being nice to her. Nowadays, the ice cream shop has been sold to new owners. The old owners retired a few years later and are living a comfortable life in the Washington Peninsula. I still talk with them online every now and then. I gave the wife my reading tablet so she could enjoy her books more often as a retirement present. My father's also retired and spends most of his time around town hanging out and playing with his friends in a blues band. And my brother and I work at a local grocer. Sophie still likes kids and the sweet things in life, but we've had to cut back on how much she gets. She's getting old and having trouble getting around now. If people show interest, I'll try to find one of our photos from when we'd stay out in front of the store eating together. Opp then added some additional details. So this happened in a small community about an hour and a half east of Seattle, Washington. The locals were, and still are, a rather tight-knit community, and everyone out here knows each other. Most of the longer-lived stores around here used to be passed from parent to child. My family was no different, but Mom decided to pursue her own career when she was younger, and sold her part of the family business to her siblings. Dad grew up in a similar community in Idaho, so he's also big on small-town values, helping neighbors when they need it, taking care of others, etc. I was a third-generation local brat, and most of the area knew my family, since my uncle still ran one of the larger stores. Sadly, people from the larger urban areas are starting to migrate out this way, so a lot of the smaller businesses are being driven under by large chain stores. For all pet owners out there, I'll say this: get your animal licensed and chipped if possible. If you can't get them licensed, keep a photo and vet records of them for when you have to prove it's your animal. And never make my mistake and leave your pet unattended in a public place. Oh my goodness, OP, this Karen has reached a whole new level of crazy. I mean, attempting to steal your dog right in front of an ice cream parlor? The audacity! I can't even wrap my head around it. And the fact that she had been watching you and Sophie for weeks? Creepy stalker alert. I have to say though, I love how you tried to convince her that Sophie wouldn't be good with kids. You had me laughing there. But seriously, who does this lady think she is, demanding your dog for her kids to play with? She's totally delusional. And the best part? The owner being the head of the local council and banning her from all local-owned stores. Talk about instant karma. Can you imagine the look on her face when she found out? Priceless! But for real guys, OP's advice at the end is golden. Always keep your pets safe and never leave them unattended. Now, I want to hear from all of you. What do you think about this wild Karen encounter? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Entitled property developer loses all his profits. This isn't my story, it's something that happened to my uncle who recently passed away. It was a story he loved telling, about how he got one over on some property developer. It's one of those things that bordered on family legend, in the way he told it, with it being hard to believe, and yet knowing my uncle and how he was, exactly the kind of thing he would do. My uncle was a self-made millionaire, though you wouldn't know it looking at him. Ratty jeans, work boots, and Western-style button-up shirts were his usual fare. He'd made his money buying and selling property in Florida, mostly to property developers who were putting up cheaply built overpriced housing communities that sprung up like weeds in the 1980 ECS. Sometime around 85, he picked up several tracts of land that had been part of a tree farm. Pine trees as far as the eye could see. He figured that he could make money off of both the trees and then parceling out the land. So after clearing one section of his land, he turned around and sold that same cleared section off to a local housing developer he knew about. I don't recall how much he made offhand, and his retelling was never clear on specifics, but easily $250K for both the land and the trees harvested. It was when the developer moved in that problems started. This developer was the type who would build these special gated communities for relatively wealthy types, not million-dollar homes. Well, in any normal market, but damn close to it in price. The kind of place that upwardly mobile types would want, where they could live in the country with all the feeling of living cut off from the peasants. They were minor annoyances, at first, such as the developer wanting more than a simple dirt road to lead back to where the housing development was, and my uncle having to provide an easement through one of his tracts of land, as well as having to pave it at his own expense. Then it was getting power run, which cut into his land once more, followed by having water and sewer run out there. Then there were other annoyances, like the property developer's construction crews cutting down some 20 or 30 of the trees that lined portions of his owned property, and having to go to court to stop them from cutting down even more. Problems with drainage prompting the developer to cut a ditch through my uncle's property, and again ending up in court, where the developer had to pay for both the trees cut and the land the ditch was on, and so on. The final straw that broke the camel's back, though, after all the relatively minor, in the grand scheme of things, annoyances, was when the developer decided to put up a gate over the easement my uncle had provided, and have the workmen use a bulldozer to put an earthen berm over the dirt access road, effectively preventing my uncle from accessing the rest of his property. The developer got taken to court once more, and while he was able to keep the berm in place, due to the easement also offering access to the property, he wasn't required to remove the gate. On paper, he was supposed to allow my uncle, or any of his own workmen to access the land, but that never really came to fruition. The guards would drag their heels, or even threaten to call the police for someone trespassing on the land, so it became more of a hassle than anything to gain access. That's when my uncle decided he'd had enough. Well, sort of. So let me back up a bit here to make a note. The developer in question wasn't exactly what we'd consider a good person. Everything he'd been doing up to this point was on par with his past actions with other property he'd purchased. He was known for this kind of behavior, and the reasoning that he did it was simple. If he annoyed the owner of a property enough, or cost them enough money, then they were more likely to sell more property to him for a lower price, just to get him out of their hair. What he never figured on, though, was just how petty and stubborn my uncle could be. So, when I say my uncle had decided that he'd had enough, he made it clear to the developer that he would be selling the property around him. Naturally, the developer offered some lowball price for it. Imagine his shock then, when my uncle noted that he planned to sell it, sure, but only after he'd gotten the trees harvested. Every single pine tree that surrounded that little community, some 1,000 acres, give or take. The developer actually tried taking him to court over this, arguing that the privacy and shade those trees provided were one of the major selling points to the houses in the development. He actually tried arguing that because of that, my uncle was forbidden from harvesting them. The court decided otherwise, with the judge noting that putting a housing development in the middle of a tree farm and not expecting that someday the farm would be harvested was a really dumb idea. It took a good 3 months to harvest all the trees, all the while with that developer doing everything he could think of to try to stop it. By the end of things, you had this development stuck smack dab in the middle of clear-cut and ruined ground, with stumps, brush, and all manner of logging trash piled up. Gone was the shade, gone was the views, and gone was any of the privacy the tree farm had once offered. Prices at the development plummeted. No one wanted to live there, and those who had purchased a home there quickly sold them. The rest of the lots remained empty and overgrown. As for the developer, I don't know if he learned his lesson, though from the way my uncle would tell it, the guy certainly didn't turn a profit on the property. Well into the early 2000s, the lots were still empty, and only a handful of the homes were occupied. Other, cheaper subdivisions were built surrounding that little gated community by then, which must have further driven down the property values, so there's that. Wow, what a wild ride with this Karen story from OP. It's crazy to think that some people will stop at nothing to get what they want, especially when it comes to property and money. And this developer is the epitome of that. From wanting more than just a dirt road leading to the development, to cutting down trees, and even putting up a gate that prevented my uncle from accessing his own property. It's insane to think that someone could be so inconsiderate and selfish. But, OP's uncle showed that he was not one to be messed with either, by selling off the property only after the trees were harvested. I mean, talk about a boss move.